it makes me sick just to mention the Eagles. Like I physically get sick talking about the Eagles. Obviously, old friend Saquon Barkley is visiting MetLife Stadium this week. And what I wanted to do is get your thoughts because obviously, Chris and you and I have talked about this, but I have not heard from Anthony or Adriana their thoughts. You guys watched Hard Knocks, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And obviously, there's a lot of controversy about, oh, Joe Shane can't let Saquon. How are you going to pay Daniel Jones and not pay Saquon Barkley? And, what are you doing here and everything else? What were your thoughts? I'll start with you, Adriana. What was your thought about him letting Saquon Barkley walk? Do you think it was the right move? Do you think he made a mistake? How did you feel about the whole situation and the way it went down?
I'm Team Joe Shane on this. I think it was 100% the right move. They offered him multiple deals before that. I understand he's a good player. He's a good running back. The Giants needed so much help this offseason and for the last couple of years that we're not in a position, and we weren't in a position to pay a running back $13 million a year. And someone who's also injury prone at that. And we've seen from other teams, Isaiah Pacheco is a perfect example of this. You do not need to pay a running back that much money. Also, look at Derrick Henry, who is getting paid $8 million a year, and he is destroying other running backs. Like, it's unbelievable. Yeah. So I was on board with letting Saquon go. I said, if they want to pay him a reasonable amount, it's not my money. I don't care. I felt the same way about the Jones contract. It's not my money. You pay him whatever. But I was not one of those fans. And the people who followed me back then, you guys know, I was on board with him moving on. I think it was the right choice. I stand by it then, and I stand by it now. And honestly, I don't really miss him. And I think the Giants fans that are crying about him not being a fan are dumb, honestly.
Mic drop.
I'm so done with this.
I'm going to tell you what, Adriana. After the last couple of weeks of watching Tyrone Tracy, I forgot about Saquon Barkley. Yes. I'm completely fine with that's not the problem with this team right now. I'm sure we'll get into that throughout the course of the stream. But the running backs seem to be just fine for me. We got a nice little committee brewing with some young guys, so not too worried about it. But yeah, some great points, Adriana.
Anthony, what did you feel about the whole Saquon Barkley thing?
Yeah, I was all for letting him walk. I thought it was best for both parties, for the Giants to go in a new direction. Tyrone Tracy is an example. Like, I think I saw a stat today, correct me if I'm wrong, Tyrone Tracy has more yards through the first 2 games of his career than Saquon Barkley did, rushing and receiving combined. So that shows you the impact right there that he's made, or as a starter, not through the first 2 games, but as a starter. That shows you the impact that he's made. And then it also just highlights once again, which we've seen numerous examples of across the league, you can find value at the running back position in the later rounds. And a lot of those guys plug and play. And also the tread on their tires is something to take note of. Saquon Barkley, a lot of injuries. You don't know when that decline is going to happen. So I thought it was best for both parties because Saquon also, I think, could use a change of scenery, a new environment. Giants fans and the discussions around Saquon Barkley got very toxic over the last couple of years. So for him to be thriving elsewhere, I hate that it's in Philly. You never want to see one of your best players go to a rival, especially Philly. I'm with you, Bad Dog. I absolutely hate Philly. That is like a piece of me dies. A piece of me dies every time we lose to that team. So there's Giants fans that want to tank the season, whatever. No, beat Philly. That's first and foremost. Got to be Philly. But I was all for it. And I think, again, Tyrone Tracy is really talented, young kid. Devin Singletary's been great as well in the few games that he started. I like what we have in our running back room.
Yeah. I agree.
Love it.
Chris, how do you feel about Saquon Barkley? Well, we've talked. Yeah, go ahead. I'll
talk about it. I mean, I pretty much agree for the most part of what both of them said. We weren't in a play. I've said it several times. I've said Saquon Barkley, for what he got paid, makes sense in a certain circumstance, such as the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that's in a Super Bowl window, a team that's equipped to support him and maximize him at that position. But the way I look at Saquon Barkley, kind of like what Anthony was saying, he's older. He plays a position that, historically speaking, falls off a cliff by the age of 29. There's been several studies on it. There's exceptions to the rule, like a guy like Adrian Peterson. Barkley's had an injury history. Didn't make a whole lot of sense. It would have been putting rims on a Toyota Prius because that was what the Giants roster was. That's the way I look at the running back position. It's flashy. It's that finishing touch. It makes your car look nicer. If I don't own the Toyota Prius, I'd downgrade to hubcaps. I'd save up my money a little bit more so I could get myself an Escalade. The Eagles have an Escalade, so they said, let's put the rims on the Escalade. So for them, it made a lot more sense. For the New York Giants, didn't make any sense. You can't pay a running back that kind of money. And I think it shows that Joe Shane, and I'm not saying he's been perfect, he hasn't been, but he has a clear plan. He has a clear vision. He's not going to be willing to overspend at positions that he feels don't warrant long-term commitments, such as the running back and such as we saw with the safety, who's off to a great start this year with the Packers with Xavier McKinney. But he puts certain value on certain positions. You've seen him spend a boatload in free agency and in terms of high draft capital in the draft on the offensive and defensive line. That's where he believes a roster is built, and he's not going to overspend on a running back, especially one that's 27. I was always of the belief that you should have extended Barkley had he stayed healthy early on in his career, because that's what teams do when they have elite running backs. They extend them when they're 24, 25, 3 years into their career. But when he's 27, coming off the injuries that he has and the state of this franchise, didn't make any sense. And as far as this week goes, I hope we kick his ass. I got nothing more to say about it than that. And I don't really miss him. I loved him as a Giant, but I don't really miss him because I think we're just fine at that position.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, we're 4 Italians. I'm sure one of us knows a cement boot maker. He makes some cement boots for Saquon, I'm sure. Listen, I've always been a proponent. Chris is a big offensive line guy, and obviously the game is still won in the trenches. I've been saying all offseason that you have to put the money in front of the quarterback, not behind the quarterback. As good as Saquon Barkley was here, and I don't know how many times I've had to say this, like till I'm blue in the face as my hat. Barkley was here for years. We didn't win any football games. He didn't win any football games. It would have been no different this year because that money would not have been in the offensive line, which is much better now. And teams could have still stuffed the box and stopped Saquon Barkley and said, hey, let your rag arm quarterback beat you. They don't do that anymore. It's a little bit different now. Like Chris said, you can't put rims on a Prius. And like Adriana said, you're winning Super Bowls with guys like Isaac Pacheco. You don't need a running back. The position is not what it was 30 years ago. These are not the Emmitt Smith days. They're not the Barry Sanders days. They're not even the Marshall Faulk days. You don't need a running back to win a title. It is a luxury position. Lord knows the Giants are not in any luxury to sign positions. The teams are built from the inside out, which is the trenches, and you work your way back. The running back is the last person in the backfield. The safety is the last person on defense. You can't start there and build in. That's what Dave Gettleman was doing for years, and that's why this didn't work. Our offensive line gave up 85 sacks last year, the second most in NFL history. So I completely understand Joe Shane saying we're not going to sign you, hit the free agent market, because like Adriana said, they also tried to sign him a couple of times. And I will tell you this, and I know this for a fact, had Barkley signed the contract, we don't have Daniel Jones because they would have tagged Jones and moved on.
Yeah.
But they got stuck in a bad spot because they couldn't tag them both. They were coming off a playoff win. They were in no position to draft a quarterback, and we're in the situation that we're in. So that sucks. But I completely agree with Joe Shane. And like Chris said, I am ready to kick his ass.